They talked down to her like a rookie. But what they didn't know was that she had once led men who never came home. The October sun burned low over the high desert training grounds of Bridgeport, California. Dust hung in the air like smoke from a slow fire. 43 Marines stood in loose formation, waiting for the day's orders of 42 men, and one woman who shouldn't have been there by their standards. Her name was Corporal Rhea Voss. And before the week was over, they would learn that names and ranks meant nothing compared to what someone carried inside. She could feel their eyes on her before anyone said a word, a few chuckles, a whisper behind her, someone betting she wouldn't last 3 days. They thought they were quiet, they weren't. $20 says she requests a transfer by Friday. I'll give her till Wednesday, maybe Thursday if she's stubborn. Rhea heard every word. She didn't react. She'd heard it before in different uniforms, different places, under different names. Prejudice didn't surprise her anymore. It only confirmed what she already knew, that most people only see what they expect to see. Staff Sergeant Kellerman stood by the equipment shed, arms crossed, watching her walk across the dusty ground. He looked at her like she was a problem the Corps hadn't figured out how to solve yet. "Corporal Voss," he said, dragging her rank like it was an accusation. "You understand this course has a 68% failure rate, even among combat-tested Marines." She nodded once. "Yes, Staff Sergeant." "We run a 20-mile ruck march on day 3, full combat load, 120-degree heat. A lot of good Marines don't make it. There's no shame in recognizing when something's too much for you." Behind him, Gunnery Sergeant Ortiz smirked. "This isn't basic training, sweetheart. This is advanced tactical leadership." Rhea's gaze didn't waver. "I know what it is. I'm ready." For a moment there was silence. Then Kellerman gestured toward the assembly area. "Your funeral," he muttered. "Formation starts in 5. She walked past them, their eyes cutting into her back like the desert sun. Behind her, Ortiz's voice carried just enough for her to hear. "Wednesday, she won't make it past Thursday." The formation stood in neat rows now, boots aligned, rifles shouldered. The air shimmered with heat and expectation. Rhea took her place in the 4th rank, next to a sergeant who glanced her way once and then fixed his eyes forward like even looking at her might lower his performance score. Captain Reeves stepped up to the platform, weathered, sunburned, voice sharp enough to cut through the murmurs. "Welcome to Advanced Combat Leadership," he began. "Over the next 4 weeks we're going to push you harder than you've ever been pushed. Physically, mentally, morally, most of you won't finish." He paused just long enough for the words to sting. "This course has the highest attrition rate in the Marine Corps. 68% fail. Some will quit. Some will get hurt. Some will realize they're not cut out for this." His eyes moved across the formation and stopped on Rhea. That single second of eye contact said everything. She was the example, the statistic waiting to happen, the one whose failure would confirm their expectations. "Your first exercise begins at 1300 hours, Reeves continued. "Urban combat scenario. Between now and then, baseline physical assessments, equipment inspection, and academic testing." He scanned the group again. "Any questions?" "None." "Good, dismissed." The candidates broke apart into clusters, sorting themselves by rank and familiarity, invisible walls forming instantly. Rhea was outside all of them, always was. The physical assessment area shimmered in the heat. Pull-up bars, a rope tower, a sprint course, all guarded by evaluators with clipboards and skeptical eyes. Staff Sergeant Kellerman was already there, leaning on a post, trading quiet remarks with the evaluators. She could tell by their glances that she was the subject. The first few candidates tore through the drills, 20-plus pull-ups, easy rope climbs, fast sprints. Each time the evaluators nodded, wrote something down, and called, "Next." Then it was her turn. Master Sergeant Chun, The only female evaluator in sight stepped closer. You need 8 for a passing score. Full extension. Chin over the bar, take your time. Rhea nodded, gripped the hot steel and pulled. 1, 2, 3. By 10, her shoulders burned. By 20, the murmurs started. At least she'll make minimum. No way she's maintaining form. She hit 27 before dropping to the dirt, arms trembling but steady. Chun wrote something down, her face unreadable. Acceptable, she said flatly. Not good, not impressive. Just acceptable. Rhea almost smiled. It was always that word. Next was the rope climb, 30 feet up, no safety harness. She scaled it like she'd done it 1,000 times before. 19 seconds. Fast enough to turn heads, slow enough not to draw too much attention. But Kellerman was watching. She saw him lean toward Chun, whisper something. Chun frowned but logged the time anyway. Then came the sprint, a quarter mile in boots and full uniform. The whistle shrieked, and 6 candidates took off. Lieutenant Bridges, tall, confident, too young arrogance painted across his face, led the pack. Rhea stayed behind him, keeping pace, reading his rhythm. He was fast, but he was overstriding. By the final 100 meters, his form broke, and she closed the gap, finishing 2 strides behind. 1:43. Controlled breathing. No collapse. Bridges was gasping like he'd sprinted out of his own lungs. She was drafting off me, he said between breaths. That's the only reason she kept up. Rhea didn't answer. She didn't have to. They would always find an explanation that let them stay comfortable. When it came time for the equipment inspection, she already knew how it would go. They tore through her gear like looking for proof she didn't belong. Your rifle cleaning kit's in the wrong pocket, Master Sergeant Hardwick said. She didn't argue. She knew the regulations allowed either side. Understood, Master Sergeant. I'll correct it. He weighed her pack 3 times, frowning. 82 pounds, barely within range. Most experienced candidates pack closer to 90. You trying to game the system, Corporal? No, Master Sergeant. I packed what's required. Behind her, Lieutenant Bridges chuckled. Maybe she doesn't know any better. First time at this level. Hardwick glanced up. That true, Corporal, first time. Rhea held his gaze. I've done tactical training before. He made a note anyway. Pass barely. She repacked her gear slowly, aware of the quiet smirk surrounding her. The sound of pencils scratching on clipboards, the betters updating their odds. She knew what they saw, a lightweight corporal trying to prove something she wasn't built for. They didn't know she'd carried heavier packs through darker places. Under real fire, where mistakes weren't graded, they were buried. The 1,300-hour exercise was set in a mock village. Cracked concrete walls, empty market stalls, a sun-bleached replica of some forgotten Middle Eastern town. Captain Reeves gathered them at the perimeter. Your mission: locate and extract hostages held by a high-value target. Unknown number of hostiles. No civilian casualties. He read the team assignments. Rhea's name came last. Team Kilo. Voss Brennan, Little Carmichael. The 3 faces that turned toward her looked nervous, too young, too uncertain. The weak team. The one set up to fail publicly so the others could learn. Kellerman smirked. Team Kilo goes first. Show the others what not to do. Rhea didn't flinch. Yes, Staff Sergeant. They had 10 minutes to plan. 10 minutes for 4 strangers to act like a team. The others stared at the briefing map, like it was written in another language. She took over quietly. We move up the East Street, clear corners, establish perimeter, dynamic entry on the target building, keep it simple, keep it clean. The others nodded, grateful someone sounded like they knew what they were doing. When the timer hit 0, Kellerman's voice came through the radio. Team Kilo, execute. The village swallowed them in silence. Narrow alleys, the smell of hot concrete, simulated civilians drifting between doorways. Rhea moved point, Brennan on her right, Carmichael and Little holding rear security. Contact front. A role player in red armband appeared. Simulated shots crackled through their earpieces. Rhea fired twice. Target neutralized. They advanced, methodical, precise. The yellow flag marking the hostage building fluttered in the sun ahead. She stacked her team on the door. On my mark. Flashbang simulation in. Entry. The blast echoed through the hall. Rhea swept left, Brennan right. 2 hostiles, both neutralized. 3 hostages bound on the floor. Clear, she called. Secure and move. They extracted clean. No civilian casualties, no friendly hits. Halfway back to the staging area, the ambush hit. Simulated gunfire erupted from rooftops and doorways. 3 hostiles. Contact front and right, Rhea shouted. Brennan suppress, Carmichael cover the hostages, Little rear. They bounded forward in pairs, moving like she'd drilled them in another lifetime. Cover, move, cover, move. When they crossed the finish line, the timer stopped at 2:48. Silence. Captain Reeves glanced at the stopwatch, then at the clipboard. All hostages recovered. No civilian casualties. Passing time. Then Ortiz stepped forward. But you got lucky, Corporal. That ambush should have shredded your team. Poor planning. Reeves nodded. Your approach was reckless, too aggressive. You didn't anticipate the ambush. In real combat, you'd all be dead. Rhea kept her face neutral. Understood, sir. They needed her to fail, and when she didn't, they needed her success to mean nothing. She could hear voices from the observation berm. Pure luck. She got easy role players. Wait till the real tests start. Reeves wrote something on his sheet. Overall evaluation, passing, barely. The word echoed again. Acceptable, barely, passable. She saluted, turned, and walked off. That night, as the sun fell behind the California mountains, the air cooled and the compound buzzed with quiet conversation. Groups of Marines laughed near the barracks, trading stories and bets. Rhea walked alone toward her quarters, a small converted office space, the only private room on base. Solitude had its price, but it also had silence. She cleaned her rifle, checked her gear, prepared for the next day's trial. 40 kilometers of land navigation alone. They'd already written her failure into tomorrow's bets. She'd heard them at dinner. She'll call for extraction before noon. No way she clears checkpoint 3. Rhea smiled faintly, setting her compass beside the map. They were wrong again. She hadn't come to prove them wrong. She'd come to prove something to herself, that the quiet inside her still had purpose, that the ghost she carried still meant something. Outside, the desert wind rattled the tin roof. Inside, her breath steadied. Tomorrow would break some of them. But she'd already been broken once, and rebuilt into something they wouldn't understand until it was too late. And somewhere beyond all of this, beyond the sneers, the bets, the doubts, waited the day when a Marine would rise from his chair, salute her, and shout the name she'd earned long before this course ever began. Iron Wolf. Why was she already awake before the alarm? Because people like her didn't need clocks to know when the fight was coming. The shrill tone hit at 400, cutting through the dark like a blade. Corporal Rhea Voss was already sitting on the edge of her bunk, lacing her boots. Outside, the wind scraped dust across the concrete. The stars were fading into a dull blue dawn, and the mountains waited like stone sentinels, cold now, but they would turn cruel by noon. 40 kilometers. 5 checkpoints. 8 hours. 80 pounds of gear. It was supposed to break her. She stepped outside. The air bit her lungs with desert chill, the kind of cold that only existed right before sunrise. Dozens of silhouettes moved toward the briefing area, headlamps flickering red across the ground. Each one of them carried confidence until the heat came. At the front of the assembly, Captain Reeves stood beside a large map board, his expression carved from granite. Staff Sergeant Kellerman and Gunnery Sergeant Ortiz flanked him, each holding stacks of sealed envelopes. When the last candidate formed up, Reeves began. "This is your land navigation exercise. You will receive coordinates for 5 checkpoints. Your route is your choice. Your pace is your choice. You must reach all 5 and return here within 8 hours. Fail to do so, you fail the course." He gestured at the map. Jagged contour lines, riverbeds and mountain ridges drawn in red grease pencil. "The terrain will test you. Elevation changes up to 1,500 feet. Dry riverbeds, loose scree, and no shade. Temperatures will hit 108 by 1,300. If you need extraction, call it. Otherwise, no assistance, no partnership. This is individual navigation. Your success or failure is yours alone." Ortiz stepped forward, his voice sharp. "If you get lost, activate your emergency beacon. We'll come get you. But once you do, you're done. Understood?" "Yes, Gunnery Sergeant," the formation roared. But their eyes said something else. They were already glancing at her. Kellerman scanned his clipboard. "Bridges your first, Martinez your second, Voss," he paused deliberately, 41st. Rhea nodded once. The late start meant she'd be chasing heat. Maybe that's what they wanted. Maybe it didn't matter. One by one, candidates stepped off into the darkness, their red lamps bobbing away like embers carried on wind. When Kellerman finally called, "Corporal Voss, step off," the sun was clawing over the horizon, turning the sand to gold. She adjusted her pack, set her compass, and started moving. The first checkpoint came easy, 6 kilometers northeast through a dry wash. The ground was hard, the air still cool. Her boots struck a steady rhythm against the earth. She didn't hurry, she never did. At 700, the first orange flag appeared, checkpoint 1. She marked her card, checked her time, 48 minutes, ahead of schedule. Checkpoint 2 lay 9 kilometers east-southeast, higher ground, rougher climb. The slope rose under her boots, loose gravel sliding with every step. The sun was climbing now, burning off the last of the morning mercy. By 8:15, sweat ran into her eyes. Her uniform clung to her back. She stopped only long enough to drink, to breathe, to look. The compass needle floated steady in its fluid, bearings exact. She didn't navigate like the others, didn't chase straight lines. She read the terrain, moved through shadows, thought 3 ridgelines ahead. At 9:15, she reached checkpoint 2. Still ahead of schedule. When she bent to mark her card, a voice drifted from below. "You're still going." Sergeant Kovac. Face flushed, shoulders already sagging. "I figured you'd have called for extraction by now." Rhea capped her pen. "You figured wrong." He muttered something under his breath, too tired to make it sting, and kept moving. She let him go. Everyone had to fight their own battle out here. Checkpoint 3 was the killer. 14 kilometers north through jagged rock and heat that came alive. By 10:30, the temperature was over 100. Her canteens felt lighter each time she lifted them. Sweat turned to salt. Her arms trembled when she adjusted the straps of her pack. Every 20 minutes she forced herself to stop, drink, check bearings, move again. The mountain seemed endless, a spine of stone splitting the desert sky. Halfway up she caught movement on the slope below. Lieutenant Bridges off course, heading west when he should have gone north. His figure swayed slightly, one hand on his compass. For a moment she considered shouting, correcting him, but this was a test of independence, and pity was a luxury she couldn't afford. She turned back to her route and climbed. At 11:45 she crested the ridge and saw it, an orange flag snapping weakly in the dry wind. Checkpoint 3. She reached it at 11:49, marked, time stamped, her breathing steady though her hands trembled. Half the day gone. 3 of 5 completed. She knelt beside the marker, checked her map. The next leg was southwest, a long descent through broken ground. Easier on navigation, harder on the knees. When she looked back down the slope, she saw 2 figures struggling up, one limping, another supporting him. Somewhere below, a helicopter's rotor thundered. Medical evac. Just like they said. By 12:30 she was moving again. The descent punished every step. Her knees screamed with each impact. Dust burned her throat. The pack straps dug into raw skin. At 12:45, the first wave of dizziness hit. She stopped, knees bent, deep breaths. The desert shimmered ahead, mirages dancing where the air bent light. She pressed on, counting steps, counting seconds, refusing to measure the pain. Checkpoint 4 appeared through the distortion, an orange blur solidifying into a flag. She marked her card. 12:30 hours. 6.5 hours elapsed. 2 checkpoints left, one final, one home. She checked her water, 1 liter, enough if she rationed. The last bearing, northwest, 10 kilometers total including the return. She could do it if she didn't slow down. Somewhere overhead, another helicopter droned, lifting another failure off the mountain. The terrain opened into a flat stretch of baked earth. No shade, no wind, just heat that clawed at her lungs and vision that tunneled to the horizon. Each step became mechanical. Left, right, left. At 1300 she crossed a dirt road. A Humvee was parked there, engine idling. Gunnery Sergeant Ortiz leaned from the passenger seat, watching her approach. "Corporal Vas," he called, "you're still moving." "Yes, Gunnery Sergeant." He checked his tablet. 4 checkpoints logged. "How much water you got?" "About a liter, Gunny." He frowned. "That's cutting it close. We can give you a refill, no penalty." She shook her head. "Negative, Gunnery Sergeant, I've got enough." He stared at her for a moment. "Your call, Corporal. Just remember, pride doesn't count for much if you pass out before the finish line." She adjusted her pack. "Understood." As she walked away, she heard him mutter to the driver, "That's either impressive determination or impressive stupidity." Maybe both. The next hour blurred. Heat waves shimmered like ghosts rising from the earth. Her body stopped sending pain signals, just dull, rhythmic pulses behind her temples. When her vision began to tunnel, she forced herself to focus on the compass. Northwest, keep the bearing, always the bearing. The 5th checkpoint appeared at 14:15, a small orange flag half buried in sand. She reached it on shaking legs, marked her card with handwriting that barely resembled her own. 2 kilometers left, 45 minutes to spare. She could walk it, she could crawl it if she had to. The slope toward base stretched below her, a ribbon of dirt leading back to civilization. She could see the operations building shimmering in the heat haze, the shapes of Marines gathered in shade. They noticed her halfway down. By the time she reached the final 100 meters, there was a small crowd, bridges among them, arms crossed, face unreadable. Staff Sergeant Kellerman stood by the finish line, clipboard in hand. Captain Reeves waited beside him. Rhea crossed the line at 14:28 hours, 7 hours, 28 minutes. "Corporal Vas," Kellerman said, voice neutral, "you finished." He took her checkpoint card, scanning each mark. All 5 verified. Reeves studied it himself. "Your times are faster than expected." He glanced up, especially checkpoint 3, that leg breaks most candidates. "I followed my bearings, sir." "We'll verify your route against the GPS data," he said flatly. "Until then, your completion is provisional." She nodded, understood. "No congratulations. Just suspicion." She moved to the shade, set down her pack and sat. The ground felt like heaven against her legs. A corpsman approached with water. "You're borderline heat exhausted," he said. "Drink 2 bottles, slow and steady." She obeyed mechanically, eyes closed, breathing returning in shallow waves. Across the recovery area, voices drifted. "I'm telling you, she cut corners," Bridges said. "Nobody moves that clean through 3 to 4 without help." Kavek added, "Maybe she followed someone's trail. Hard to prove if she stayed far enough back." Rhea kept her eyes shut, let them talk. They needed the illusion that her success was an accident, because if it wasn't, it meant their certainty about her, about themselves, was wrong. By 1600 hours, only 31 of 43 had finished. 12 were down, heat, injury, or surrender. Reeves stood before the survivors. 72% success rate, he announced. Better than average, but numbers don't tell the full story. His gaze found Rhea again. "Some of you finished strong, others barely made it. And one of you," he let the pause linger, "is under review for root integrity." Every head turned. He didn't need to say her name. "Until we confirm GPS data, your status remains provisional." He dismissed them, and the whispers started before he finished speaking. That night the compound was quieter than usual. The betting pools had gone silent. Nobody wanted to admit what they were thinking, that the woman they'd written off was still standing. Rhea sat at her small desk, the glow from her lamp throwing long shadows on the wall. Her body ached. Her shoulders were raw. Her mind was clear. Outside, the desert wind sang low against the windows. They'd question her success, maybe even try to strip it away. That was fine. She didn't need their validation, she just needed to finish what she started. Still, a thought gnawed at her. How many times had she lived this same pattern? Doubt, dismissal, quiet defiance. Success explained away. Somewhere, in another world behind redacted files and silent halls, there were men who knew who she really was, men who'd once called her something else. Not Corporal. Not Voss. Iron Wolf. They couldn't say her past out loud, not in this course, not here. The record erased it. The Corps called it need to know. But sometimes at night, she wondered if that secrecy had become a kind of prison, the punishment for surviving too much, for knowing too many truths about what war really costs. Tomorrow would bring answers, or accusations. Either way, she would face it the same way she faced everything, with silence, composure, and the quiet power of someone who no longer needed to prove anything, except to herself. Why did success always feel like a crime when it came from her? Maybe because some people only respected victories that looked like their own. The sun had barely climbed above the ridgelands when they called her name. "Corporal Voss, report to operations, now." Rhea stepped into the office that smelled of paper, coffee, and quiet judgment. Captain Reeves sat behind a desk cluttered with printouts and GPS overlays. Staff Sergeant Kellerman stood off to the side, arms crossed. Gunnery Sergeant Ortiz leaned near the window, expression unreadable. Master Sergeant Chun sat in a chair near the back, her face the only one not hardened by suspicion. "Sit down, Corporal," Reeves said. She sat. Reeves spread 3 sheets across the desk, colored lines crawling across topographic maps. "This is your GPS route," he said. "This one's Lieutenant Bridges. This one's Sergeant Kavak. I want to talk about something unusual." He tapped her route, a near-perfect curve connecting all 5 checkpoints with almost no deviation. "Your navigation path is clean, too clean." Rhea met his eyes. "Sir, I followed my bearings and terrain features as briefed." "Efficient is one word," Kellerman said from the corner. "Suspicious is another." Ortiz folded his arms. "Checkpoint 3 to 4 breaks even our best recon Marines. Your time on that leg was faster than Martinez, and he's got reconnaissance quals. You don't." "I studied the map thoroughly," Rhea said. "Picked optimal terrain." Chun leaned forward slightly. "Corporal, I reviewed your record. There's nothing in your file that would explain navigation proficiency like that. No mountain warfare course. No advanced land nav training. No recon attachments. Nothing. Rhea didn't blink. Maybe my record doesn't reflect all my experience, Master Sergeant. Kellerman laughed quietly. Cute answer. Reeves' tone turned colder. Are you suggesting your record's incomplete, Corporal? She paused a small breath, just long enough to choose her words. I'm suggesting I've learned from experience. Some lessons don't come from schools. For a long moment, silence filled the room. The hum of an old air conditioner vibrated in the walls. Ortiz stepped forward, resting both hands on the desk. You expect us to believe you outperformed half a class of seasoned Marines because of, what, intuition? I expect nothing, Gunnery Sergeant. Her voice was calm. You asked what I did, I told you. Reeves studied her for a long beat, eyes narrowing as though trying to see through her. Finally, he sighed. We can't prove you cheated. GPS data doesn't show shadowing or assisted movement. Kellerman frowned. That just means she was careful. Chun spoke softly, cutting through the tension. Sir, the data supports her route. No anomalies, no unexplained jumps, everything aligns. Reeves tapped the printouts once, then gathered them into a neat pile. Fine. Against my better judgment, your completion stands. He looked up at her again. But understand this, I'm watching you now. Every test, every drill, one mistake, one inconsistency, and you're done. Clear. Crystal clear, sir. Good. You've missed this morning's training brief. Report to the physical training area for the afternoon combat conditioning session. Rhea stood. Yes, sir. She turned to leave, but just before she reached the door, Kellerman muttered under his breath, not softly enough. Something doesn't add up with her. Reeves didn't answer. Outside, the desert heat hit her like a wall. The sun had risen high, bleaching the sky to a white so bright it hurt. At the physical training field, 30 candidates were moving through obstacles, dragging sandbags, flipping tires, climbing ropes. The air smelled of sweat, iron, and dust. When she joined the formation, eyes tracked her from every direction. No one said a word, but the message was clear. The woman who barely passed was now a suspected fraud. Lieutenant Bridges stood with a group near the rope tower. When she approached, he smirked. Guess they couldn't prove it, huh? Prove what? She asked. That you cheated, he said. Nobody beats that route on skill alone. Maybe next time, leave breadcrumbs makes the story easier to believe. She met his stare. If I'd wanted easy, Lieutenant, I'd have quit. Bridges' grin faltered just enough to tell her she'd landed the blow. The conditioning drills were designed to break bodies already half spent. Tire flips, sandbag carries, log lifts, four-man teams moving in painful sync. When Rhea's team assembled, the tension was immediate. Sergeant Diaz, Corporal Henderson, and Lance Corporal Park, all bigger, louder, and uninterested in her presence. Keep up, Corporal, Diaz growled as they hoisted the 200-pound log onto their shoulders. We're not carrying your weight. She didn't reply. She adjusted, matched their pace, absorbed their rhythm until her movement blended seamlessly with theirs. But they didn't notice. They were too busy compensating for the weakness they'd already decided she had. When they reached the finish line, the log crashed down. Ortiz stood waiting, clipboard in hand. That was sloppy, he barked. You three were fighting each other instead of working as a team. He turned to Rhea. And you let them. Poor leadership from everyone involved. Diaz glared at her as they jogged off to the next station. You happy now? We just got flagged because of you. Rhea didn't answer. She saved her breath for the next task. Ammunition carries came next, 50 pounds per hand, half a mile at double time. By now, the sun was merciless. Every step felt like walking through boiling air. Bridges led the pack again, long strides cutting through the course. Behind him, the field spread into a slow line of struggling figures. Rhea grabbed her cans and started moving. The weight bit into her palms, but her breathing stayed measured. Halfway through, the world narrowed to rhythm. Boots, breath, boots, breath. She crossed the finish line in the top third. No fanfare, no nods, just more disbelief. Bridges checked his watch like he didn't trust the time. Guess miracles do happen, he muttered to Martinez. Give it a week. The pretenders always wash out. Rhea set her cans down gently and walked to shade. Her arms ached, but her heartbeat was steady, the steady calm of someone who'd been running on pain for years. By 1700 hours, the session ended. Candidates stumbled toward the mess hall, sweat-soaked and limping. Rhea returned to her quarters, silent, methodical. She cleaned her weapon, checked her gear, stretched until her muscles stopped trembling. A knock interrupted her rhythm. Master Sergeant Chun stood in the doorway again, same calm presence, same measured tone. "Corporal Voss," she said, "you got a minute?" "Of course, Master Sergeant." Chun stepped inside. The room was small, a cot, a desk, a metal chair, everything folded and neat. She glanced around as though searching for answers in the orderliness. "I wanted to follow up on this morning," Chun said. "Your GPS review cleared you, but it doesn't explain your performance." Rhea tilted her head. "Performance, Master Sergeant." Chun folded her arms. "I've been evaluating candidates for 8 years. I can usually tell who'll make it and who won't by day 1. You should have failed by now. Everything about your record says you shouldn't be keeping up, let alone outperforming." "Maybe I'm better than my record," Rhea said quietly. "That's what bothers me," Chun replied. "If you're that capable, why isn't it documented? Why no advanced schools, no recon quals, nothing?" She paused. "It feels like there's something missing, something you're not telling us." Rhea's gaze didn't waver. "My file is accurate, Master Sergeant." Chun studied her face, looking for cracks that weren't there. Finally, she sighed. "Then you're an anomaly, Corporal, and anomalies make people nervous. We like predictable patterns. You're breaking the pattern." "Maybe the pattern needs breaking," Rhea said softly. Chun's eyes flickered, something between respect and concern. "Careful, Corporal. That kind of thinking doesn't last long in this system." When she left, the room felt heavier. That night the desert was alive with wind. The base lights flickered across the courtyard, throwing long, restless shadows. Rhea sat at her desk, elbows resting on her knees, hands clasped together. Her body ached, but her mind was sharp, painfully awake. Every breath carried the same thought. They don't want me to succeed. They want me to quit, to confirm what they already believe. But quitting was something she'd forgotten how to do. Her fingers brushed the corner of an old coin tucked in her breast pocket, worn smooth over years. A memory flashed, dim lights, sandstorm winds, voices on comms that no longer answered. That coin had come from a man who'd once called her Iron Wolf. He said she earned it the night she dragged 2 wounded operators out of a kill zone, 1 step at a time, bleeding the whole way, refusing morphine until they were safe. But that was another life, another name. Classified, buried. The Corps didn't remember, but she did. The next morning's formation buzzed with rumors. Candidates whispered about an upcoming announcement, something big. Captain Reeves stood before them, binder in hand. His face looked carved from exhaustion. "This week determines who graduates," he said. "You've all proven you can follow orders. Now we test whether you can lead." He scanned the formation. The culminating exercise begins Thursday at 200 hours. 72 hours of continuous operations. Live fire, tactical simulations, 0 sleep. We'll see who still performs under pressure. Gunnery Sergeant Ortiz stepped forward. 30% fail this phase, he said. Most due to leadership collapse, bad calls that get your teams killed. You'll rotate command roles. Everyone leads. Everyone's judged. Kellerman lifted a thick binder. Your assignments and scenario packets are inside. Study hard. No second chances. Then his eyes found her. And for those who have been skating by on luck, this is where that luck runs out. The formation broke. Rhea took her packet and moved with the others to a briefing room. Her team assignment was stamped across the cover in bold letters, Team Delta. She scanned the roster. Sergeant Weir, Corporal Henderson, Lance Corporal Park, Corporal Brennan, Lance Corporal Little, Corporal Carmichael, Corporal Holmes. 8 total. Not the best, not the worst. The middle ground where leadership either ignites or dies quietly. Inside the briefing room, the air buzzed with speculation. Weir leaned toward Henderson. "Look who's leading at the midnight shift," he whispered, pointing at Rhea's name. "Hour 36 through 48, that's when people start breaking." Henderson smirked. "Perfect setup. Give her the hardest window, then watch her crash, clean and fair." Ramos, a sergeant known for betting pools, nodded. "You can't fake leadership at hour 40. That's when everything falls apart." Rhea ignored them. She opened her packet and started reading terrain maps, comm frequencies, mission objectives, stress protocols. Every detail mattered. She'd led real missions under real fire, where the price of failure wasn't embarrassment, it was body bags. This would be different, but not harder. That evening, as the sun bled over the ridges, she sat alone under the covered tables outside the mess hall. The wind carried faint laughter from the barracks, men talking about who'd fail, who'd fold. Her name came up more than once. She smiled faintly. There was a strange calm in knowing exactly what people thought of you and knowing they were wrong. A bird circled above the training grounds, wings black against the dying light. Rhea watched it disappear into the horizon, then whispered the words her old commanding officer once told her before their final deployment. "Strength isn't loud, it's patient." She closed her eyes and breathed. The final test was coming. And when it ended, when the dust and smoke cleared, someone would stand, look her in the eye and remember. Iron Wolf. What breaks first, the body, or the silence you hold inside it? By 1:30 hours, the desert was nothing but wind and shadow. The air tasted of dust and cold metal. Floodlights carved white scars through the darkness as Marines formed up on the gravel, packs strapped, rifles slung. "No moon, no mercy." Captain Reeves' voice carried over the loudspeaker. 72 hours, no resets, no sleep. You lead, you adapt, or you fail. He didn't shout, he didn't have to. The quiet in his tone said everything, that this wasn't training anymore. This was dissection. They would peel back every layer until only truth remained. Team Delta stood near the far end of the line. 8 faces, 8 different levels of confidence and fear. Rhea Voss adjusted the strap on her helmet, eyes tracing the horizon where black sky met blacker hills. Sergeant Weir checked his watch. "We move in 20. Rally Point Bravo, then Objective Sierra 4. Simple insert." "Simple," Brennan muttered, loading a magazine. "That's what they said before every ambush I've ever seen." Rhea didn't speak. She just listened, reading voices, measuring nerves. The first few hours of a long op always told her who would last and who would crumble. Weir caught her gaze. "You've got the second rotation command," he said. 36 through 48, you good with that?" "Good," she replied. He studied her for a moment. "You don't talk much, do you?" "Nothing worth saying yet." He almost smiled. "Fair." At 200 hours, flares streaked skyward bright red, tearing the darkness open. "Exercise start," a voice boomed through loudspeakers. "Teams deploy." They moved. Boots crunched gravel, radios whispered codes, the desert swallowed everything. Their first objective: simulate securing a forward observation post on a ridge 5 clicks north. Easy terrain on paper, brutal in the dark. Rhea moved in the middle of the formation, rifle raised, eyes scanning shadows. Each breath came with the smell of dust and adrenaline. Halfway up the slope, the first simulated contact hit, blank rounds, pyrotechnic flashes, radio static. "Contact front, 2-story ruin 50 meters, Weir shouted. Rhea dropped behind a boulder, returned fire with short, controlled bursts. The others scrambled into position. Brennan called distances. Park stumbled but corrected. It was chaos, but organized enough to survive. By 2:45, they'd cleared the ruin, tagged the hostiles, and secured the ridge. A drone overhead buzzed faintly, recording every movement for evaluation. Ortiz's voice came through the comms. Team Delta, objective secure. Time recorded, proceed to Phase 2. Weir exhaled. Phase 1 done, good work. Rhea watched the horizon. It's never done, Sergeant. They're just changing the rules. He gave her a sideways look. You've done this before. She said nothing. By sunrise, fatigue had crept into everyone's faces. The cold vanished, replaced by a heat that shimmered off the ground. Sweat ran down necks, soaked through collars. They reached an abandoned quarry, the next objective. Secure, fortify, defend against enemy assault. Simulated rounds again, but the exhaustion was real. Rhea helped dig in firing positions, reinforced their perimeter, checked line of sight. Weir moved between teams, barking instructions. Hours passed, the sun climbed higher. At 1100 hours, Ortiz's voice crackled again. Incoming assault, 2 platoons, hold position for 15 minutes. The noise came first, machine gun simulators, mortars thudding into dust clouds. Rhea's world shrank to rhythm. Sight, breathe, fire. Sight, breathe, fire. Park froze. Rhea grabbed his collar, yanking him behind cover just as a smoke charge detonated where he'd been standing. Focus, Marine, she snapped. I couldn't see. You see now, don't you? He nodded, trembling, and returned to firing. When the horn finally sounded ceasefire, half the team was down in simulated KIA tags. Rhea checked her weapon, 1 magazine left. Weir staggered over, face streaked with dust. 15 minutes felt like 15 hours. Rhea looked at the smoke drifting through the quarry. That's how real fights feel too. He gave her a puzzled look. You talk like someone who's seen them. Maybe I have. He wanted to ask more, but she'd already turned away. By nightfall, they had been awake for nearly 20 hours. Muscles trembled from caffeine and grit. Dinner was cold rations eaten by red light lamps. When the second night came, Weir's leadership shift ended. Rhea's began. Team Delta leadership rotation, Ortiz announced over comms. Corporal Voss, you have command from this hour. Weir handed her the radio. All yours, Corporal. Rhea adjusted the headset, checked her watch. 1:40 hours. The hardest hours between 1 and 4, when the mind turns against itself. Everyone hydrate, she said. Check ammo, we move in 5. Brennan groaned. We just sat down. You can rest when we're through the checkpoint, she replied. Not before. Henderson rolled his eyes. You sound like every lieutenant I've hated. Then I'm in good company, she said. They moved out again, crossing barren flats under starlight. No wind now, just stillness and footsteps. After an hour, Park stumbled. Ma'am, sorry, Corporal, I think I'm seeing double. You're dehydrated, she said. Sit, drink, breathe. He obeyed, hands shaking. She crouched beside him. You keep moving too fast, you'll black out. Weir whispered over comms, we can call a pause. Rhea shook her head. No, the clock doesn't pause for us. Rotate weight off him. Henderson, take half his load. Henderson hesitated. Why me? Because you're stronger and less tired. Do it. Something in her tone cut through argument. He obeyed. Minutes later, they were moving again. At 300 hours, the world began to unravel. The instructors had planned it that way, to push them into hallucination, confusion, emotional fracture. Over the radio came new orders. Team Delta, divert to coordinates Bravo 97, possible hostage scenario. Rhea copied the grid, plotted it on the map. We're pivoting east, 4-click detour. Brennan swore, east is uphill, that's suicide. She glanced at him, then died tired. He glared but followed. Halfway up the slope, the first signs of collapse appeared: tremors in hands, slow reactions, silence replacing jokes. At the crest, they saw the target, a mock compound with dim lights and mannequins positioned as hostiles. Rhea gathered them in a huddle. Two-man entry, we clear corner to corner. No noise, no flashbangs. Park, stay rear security. Weir nodded, adjusting his rifle. Your call, boss. They entered. The first room was empty. The second was 3 hostiles in red armbands. Rhea's movement was a whisper. One step, one breath, one trigger press. Controlled fire. Clear, she whispered. They advanced room by room until they reached the hostages. 3 mannequins bound to chairs. Secure and extract, she ordered. The exercise sensors beeped green, mission success. They exfiltrated silently, leaving nothing behind but footprints. By 500 hours, dawn bled over the horizon again. The temperature plummeted, then began its brutal climb. Rhea's shift ended at 600, but Reeves' voice cut in before she could hand over command. All teams stand by. Incoming evaluation. A convoy of Humvees approached, Reeves, Ortiz, Kellerman, and Chun stepping out, clipboards ready. Ortiz spoke first. Team Delta, stand at attention. They formed a crooked line, 8 figures coated in dirt and exhaustion. Reeves looked each of them over, eyes lingering on Rhea. I've reviewed your performance for the past 36 hours. Efficiency high, casualties low, cohesion improved. Kellerman added, 2 improved. You were a disaster on day 1, now you move like a veteran recon squad. That's not development, that's experience. Rhea said nothing. Reeves took a slow step closer. Corporal Voss, where did you learn to lead like that? In the field, sir. What field? Silence. He studied her face for a long moment, not with anger now, but with something else. Curiosity, maybe respect. Finally, he nodded. Carry on, Team Delta. As they turned away, Ortiz muttered to Reeves, you feel that? That calm, that's not fear. That's someone who's already survived worse than this. Reeves didn't answer. By the second night, hallucinations came for everyone. Shapes and shadows, voices that weren't real. Weir saw movement that wasn't there. Brennan cursed at rocks. Henderson laughed at nothing. But Rhea stayed composed. Her eyes never wandered. Her movements remained deliberate. When Weir faltered, she steadied him. When Brennan stumbled, she lifted his pack. Why aren't you tired? Weir whispered once, voice cracking. I am, she said softly. I just learned how to keep moving anyway. He didn't understand, not yet. Hour 68, the final assault. The objective: seize the mock enemy headquarters, rescue hostages, extract before 800. The instructors had saved the worst for last: steep terrain, heavy simulation fire, and smoke thick enough to choke on. They advanced under fire, blank rounds rattling, simulated explosions rocking the ground. Henderson froze again. Rhea grabbed his shoulder. Move. He shook his head. Can't, my legs. She yanked him down behind cover, then crawl. He obeyed. They breached the compound under a storm of noise. Inside, chaos, red armbands everywhere. Rhea took point, firing controlled bursts. Brennan left corridor, Weir right flank. A training grenade landed near her boots. She kicked it aside instinctively, a real reaction to a fake blast. Smoke swallowed her. Coughing, she reached the inner room. The hostages were there. She cut their restraints, led them out. Outside, a horn blared 3 long notes. Exercise complete. Silence fell deep and unreal. They stood panting in the dawn light, smoke curling around them. Ortiz approached, clipboard in hand. Team Delta, mission success. Lowest casualty rate, best timing. Weir looked at her, half smiling. Guess you didn't crash after all. Rhea exhaled slowly. Not today. Hours later, back at base, Reeves assembled the entire class for the final debrief. The candidates looked half-dead, hollow eyes, salt-stained uniforms, sunburned faces. He spoke without ceremony. 43 started, 28 finished. You've earned that number. He paused. Some of you surprised me. His gaze found Rhea. Some of you reminded me what discipline really looks like. He stepped closer, voice softening. Leadership isn't noise, it's endurance. It's what stays standing when everything else falls apart. Then, almost as if addressing her directly, sometimes strength wears silence like armor. Rhea met his eyes but said nothing. The wind carried a strange calm through the formation, the kind that follows storms. When he dismissed them, the Marines broke into scattered groups. Laughter, relief, disbelief. Rhea walked away quietly, toward the equipment shed. That's when she heard it. A single voice, low at first, then louder, a Marine from another team, watching her pass. He rose to his feet, heels clicking together, hands snapping to his brow in salute. "Iron Wolf," he said. The words cut through the noise like a blade through glass. Every head turned. Rhea froze. The Marine's eyes held recognition, the kind born from shared history, from nights neither of them would ever speak of. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "it's an honor." Rhea's jaw tightened. "At ease, Sergeant." But it was too late. The others had heard. "Iron Wolf," someone whispered. "What the hell that?" The Marine just smiled faintly. "Ask someone who's seen her work." And then he walked away. That night she sat alone in her room again, the base silent around her. The nickname echoed in her mind, not as pride but as memory. She'd spent years burying it, hiding behind new names, new uniforms, trying to disappear into ordinary ranks. But ghosts never stay buried forever. Now the truth was seeping through the cracks. And the question wasn't whether they'd find out, but what they'd do when they did. Outside, the desert wind whispered through the flagpole. Sometimes silence speaks louder than any metal. And sometimes dignity doesn't defend itself. It just stands. Why did 3 words feel heavier than any medal she'd ever earned? Iron Wolf. It echoed through the courtyard, long after the Marine walked away. Even the wind seemed to pause, holding its breath. Rhea didn't move. Her hand lingered at her side, her boots rooted to the ground. Around her, silence thickened, 100 unspoken questions hanging in the air. Who was she? What had she done to earn a name like that? And why did a Marine, a combat-tested sergeant, salute her like a superior officer? She turned, walked away without a word. Every step felt like walking through glass. Inside the barracks, whispers spread faster than wildfire. By evening, everyone had heard it. Iron Wolf. Some thought it was a call sign. Some said it was a legend, a ghost from classified missions in Eastern Europe, a sniper who'd gone missing, a woman erased from the books after a black op that went bad. No one knew for sure. But everyone was suddenly careful when she walked past. Rhea could feel it, the shift. Where there had been mockery, there was now distance. Where there had been laughter, there was silence. It didn't feel like respect. It felt like exposure. That night, Captain Reeves called her in again. He didn't say sit, he didn't need to. The room was dim, only a desk lamp between them. Reeves slid a file across the table. The tab read, VOSS REACPL USMC. Except it wasn't her file anymore. It was thinner, stripped, sanitized. "Funny thing," Reeves said quietly, "this file doesn't match your training record." Rhea's jaw flexed. "Sir." He leaned forward, elbows on the table. "I pulled your previous postings. There's a 2-year gap between your discharge from a security battalion and your re-enlistment. 2 years gone. No record of civilian work, no schooling, no trace of you anywhere." She didn't answer. He opened the file again, tapping a page. You know what I found instead? A redacted reference in a special operations annex. Black ink. No clearance tags. That's not an omission, that's a deliberate erasure. Still, she said nothing. Reeves sat back. So tell me, Corporal, who exactly are you? Rhea looked him in the eyes, steady, unflinching. I'm a Marine, sir, nothing more. He studied her for a long moment. You're something, all right, just not what your file says you are. The room filled with silence again, thick, deliberate, the kind that made truth breathe between words. Finally, he sighed. Look, Voss, I'm not trying to dig into ghosts, but if you're hiding something that could compromise this unit, I need to know. You're not compromised, sir. Then help me understand why one of my own men stood at attention like you outranked God. She hesitated. He recognized something he wasn't supposed to. Reeves' brow furrowed. Meaning. Meaning he was there, sir, years ago. A mission that never made the briefings. A place that doesn't exist on your maps. Reeves' voice dropped. That sounds like the kind of place I don't ask about. Exactly. For a moment, he just stared at her. Then he closed the file slowly, as though sealing a secret he never wanted. Understood, he said quietly. You've earned the right to your silence. Just don't let it destroy you. She nodded once. Permission to return to quarters, sir. Granted. As she turned to leave, he called after her, softer this time. Corporal Voss, or whatever name you wore before, I've seen a lot of Marines fake courage. You don't. I don't know what you've been through, but welcome back. She paused at the doorway, eyes shadowed. I never left, sir. By morning, the story had turned into rumor, and rumor into mythology. They said she'd once been an attached sniper for a joint task unit operating deep in hostile territory. They said she'd survived a mission that killed everyone else. They said she'd been court-martialed, then quietly reinstated under a new name. Some called her a ghost, others a liar. The truth was simpler and far heavier. She hadn't been court-martialed. She'd been forgotten on purpose. After an op that went wrong, higher command needed clean records, clean headlines, clean politics. And the truth, her truth, didn't fit. So they scrubbed her file, changed her name, and sent her back into the system as if she'd never existed. She was supposed to fade quietly. Until a Marine remembered. At noon, the instructors gathered everyone in the briefing yard for the awards presentation, the official conclusion of the course. Captain Reeves stood before them, clipboard in hand. Every one of you who stands here today has earned it, he began. You were tested beyond exhaustion. You've proven leadership, integrity, and endurance. He looked across the formation, letting the moment breathe. Some of you showed potential. A few of you showed greatness. His gaze landed on Rhea, and one of you reminded us that strength doesn't need to shout. A murmur rippled through the formation. Reeves continued. This Marine, despite every obstacle, every doubt, every whisper, led her team to the best overall performance of the course. No shortcuts, no excuses. He stepped forward, extending a certificate. Corporal Voss, front and center. Rhea moved through the formation, boots striking dust. She stopped before him, saluted. He returned it. Congratulations, Corporal, you've earned it. The crowd clapped, hesitant at first, then stronger. But before the noise died, another voice broke through the air. A familiar one. Permission to speak, sir. It was the same Marine who'd called her Iron Wolf. He stepped forward, standing at parade rest. Sir, I request acknowledgement for Corporal Voss's previous commendations, specifically her actions under Joint Task Command 12, Operation Daggerfall. The courtyard went silent. Reeves turned sharply. Sergeant, that's classified material. Yes, sir, the Marine said, but I was there. She saved 6 of us when our convoy was hit outside Alcara. Command never recognized it. They said we were ghosts, but ghosts don't carry men out of fire. Reeves stared speechless. The Marine looked at Rhea, eyes steady, voice cracking just slightly. We called her Iron Wolf because when everyone else panicked, she didn't. She moved through smoke and shrapnel like it was daylight. And when our code bled out, she took command without rank, without permission, and brought us home. He saluted again. Respect where it's due, sir. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Captain Reeves returned the salute, slowly, deliberately. The entire formation followed. Dozens of hands rose to brows. One heartbeat at a time. Rhea didn't move, her throat locked, her breath came shallow. In the silence between those salutes, years of buried guilt and pride collided, everything she'd lost, everything she'd tried to forget. Her lips parted, but no words came. Finally, she nodded once, not to claim the moment, but to release it. Because real honor doesn't demand acknowledgement. It just stands when called. That night she walked alone past the training fields. The dust had settled, the lights dimmed. Somewhere far off, laughter drifted from the barracks, relief, celebration. She wasn't part of it, never had been. The desert stretched wide and indifferent before her, whispering the same truth it always did. That silence isn't weakness, it's memory. She sat on a low wall near the range, looking out toward the horizon where darkness swallowed the last trace of light. For a long time she said nothing. Then quietly she spoke, not to anyone but to the ghosts that followed her. They finally said your names, she whispered, even if they didn't know they were saying them. The wind carried her words away. Her eyes fell on the old coin again, the one from Alcara. Its edges were worn, its surface scratched smooth by years of being held. She turned it over in her hand. On one side a faded engraving, a wolf's head. It wasn't a medal, it wasn't official. It was a promise. To never let fear decide who lived or who was remembered. She slipped it back into her pocket, stood and faced the range. Tomorrow she'd leave Bridgeport. But something had changed. Not in how they saw her, but in how she saw herself. She'd carried shame for surviving when better soldiers hadn't. Now, for the first time, she understood. Living wasn't betrayal. It was testimony. The next morning, as the sun broke the horizon, she packed her duffel and walked toward the transport truck. Captain Reeves waited by the gate. He didn't salute, he didn't need to. He just said, "For what it's worth, Corporal, I think we needed someone like you here," reminded us that leadership isn't always loud. Rhea adjusted her pack. Leadership's just responsibility, sir. Sometimes that means carrying what no one else wants to remember. Reeves nodded slowly. Maybe so, still Iron Wolf, huh? She half smiled. That name belongs to ghosts now. Maybe, Reeves said quietly, but I think they'd be proud you're still walking. She looked out across the open desert, sunlight spilling across endless sand and silence. Maybe they would, she said softly, or maybe they'd just tell me to keep moving. Reeves stepped back, giving her space. Where will you go next? Rhea lifted her bag onto her shoulder. Wherever they still underestimate me. He smiled faintly. Then I don't think you'll ever run out of work. She nodded once, then turned toward the waiting truck. The engine rumbled to life, kicking up a cloud of dust as it rolled forward. Through the haze, her figure blurred, not vanishing, but fatting into something larger, something enduring. Because legends aren't made from noise. They're made from silence that refused to break. And somewhere in the distance, that same Marine from the courtyard whispered under his breath as the dust swallowed her up. Iron Wolf salute. They said legends fade when the fighting stops. But what if the fighting never really leaves you? 2 months after Bridgeport, Corporal Rhea Voss stepped off a transport plane onto a tarmac half a world away. The heat was wet now, heavy with diesel and humidity, not the clean burn of desert air. the kind that made sweat cling and sand stick to skin. Her new post wasn't glamorous. Forward Observation Outpost Bravo 9, a perimeter installation somewhere between nowhere and classified. Not a combat zone on paper, but close enough to hear thunder that wasn't weather. The orders were simple. Assist a joint Marine Army recon element monitoring cross-border movements. Simple. But Rhea knew simple was never simple. She slung her duffel over one shoulder and walked toward the open hangar, where a half-dozen troops stood waiting. A tall figure stepped forward, a lieutenant with weathered skin and eyes that looked like they hadn't closed in a week. Corporal Voss. Yes, sir. Lieutenant Mason, welcome to Bravo 9. He offered a quick handshake, firm, professional. We've heard a lot about you. Rhea felt it instantly, the weight behind those words. Not about your record. About your story. Good things, I hope, she said evenly. He half smiled. Depends who you ask. Bravo 9 wasn't much. A handful of concrete bunkers and corrugated huts surrounded by wire and dust. Radios hummed, generators coughed, and the smell of oil clung to everything. Inside the main command tent, Mason pointed to a satellite map pinned to the wall. This is our area of observation, he said. Cross-border infiltration routes, supply trails, the usual. We run recon sweeps at night, track movement by day. 2 platoons rotate patrols. You'll be embedded with Alpha Team. Rhea nodded. Understood, sir. Staff Sergeant Cole in charge. He'll get you settled. She hesitated. Any intel on recent contact? Mason's jaw tightened. 3 days ago, Alpha Team lost 2 men during a night patrol, ambush in the canyons. We recovered 1 body, the others still missing. Who? Sergeant First Class Danner, solid man. He was Cole's right hand. Rhea studied the map again, a narrow ravine marked in red. You think they're still out there? I know they are, Mason said quietly. We just haven't found them yet. He handed her a folder. You came recommended. Bridgeport's evaluation said you can lead under pressure. Prove them right. Rhea took the folder, tucking it under her arm. I'll do my job, sir. Mason's gaze lingered. That's all I need you to do, but be careful who you impress. This unit doesn't like ghosts showing up with new names. By evening, she met her new team. Staff Sergeant Cole, broad shoulders, close-cropped hair, face like he'd been chiseled from stubbornness. Corporal Mendez, quiet, calculating, the team's tech and drone operator. Lance Corporal Thompson, young, brash, too confident for his experience. Private Ramos, fresh boots, too new to know what fear smelled like yet. When she introduced herself, silence followed. Cole broke it with a short nod. You're the replacement. Replacement, not reinforcement, she asked. Depends how long you last. Thompson grinned. Heard you're some kind of miracle worker, that true? She adjusted her gear. Miracles aren't in my MOS. Cole's eyes narrowed. Good, we don't need myths. We need Marines who follow orders. Rhea just nodded. Then we won't have a problem. Night fell fast. The desert here was different, heavy, breathing heat that never left even after the sun was gone. They moved out at 2100 hours, a 5-man patrol through terrain that looked alive in infrared, ridges, dry riverbeds, fractured stone. Cole led, Rhea followed close. Keep comms tight, he ordered. Noise discipline, eyes open. The night swallowed sound. Only the crunch of boots and the hum of distant drones filled the dark. Rhea's senses sharpened. Every rustle, every flicker of light on the horizon, she felt it before she saw it. She'd been here before in another country under another name. Same terrain, same silence. Halfway through the patrol, they reached the ravine, the one where Danner vanished. Cole signaled a halt, thermals up. Mendez scanned the slope. Nothing moving, no heat signatures. Rhea crouched, flashlight low, examining the ground. Disturbed sand, tracks heading north, human, not animal. Cole frowned. You sure? She looked up. I'm sure. He hesitated, then motioned. We move. 200 meters in, the ravine narrowed. The world became vertical, jagged stone pressing in on both sides. That's when Rhea felt it, the faint shift of air, the kind that meant movement above. Stop, she hissed. Cole turned. What? A flash of light, then sound, deafening, chaotic. Blank fire erupted from both sides, echoing through the canyon. Contact left and right, Cole shouted. Rhea dove behind a rock, muzzle flashing. Mendez, get smoke out. Already on it. Thompson fired blind, shouting curses. Ramos froze, eyes wide, breath ragged. Rhea grabbed his vest. Focus, private, keep low. Smoke rolled across the canyon, thick and white. The enemy shapes vanished. Then silence. The radio crackled, Mason's voice. Alpha team status. Cole responded, we're fine, sir. Ambush simulated training test. Rhea blinked, training. Cole exhaled. Command run surprise simulations, tests reaction under stress. She stared at him, anger flickering beneath her calm. You knew. Didn't need to, he said. Out here you assume everything's live. He holstered his weapon. You handled yourself, not bad. Rhea didn't respond. She just looked back toward the ridge, and something in her gut whispered that not all the shadows had been simulated. When they returned to base, the night was still heavy with heat. Cole debriefed with Mason. Rhea lingered outside, sitting on a concrete barrier, helmet beside her. Mendez joined her, handing over a canteen. Hell of a first patrol. Routine, she said. He looked at her, studying her face. You're calm, too calm. Would you rather I panic? He smirked. No, but most people flinch their first time in the ravine. She took a slow sip. I don't flinch anymore. Yeah, he said softly. That's what they say about you. You don't flinch, ever. She turned her head slightly. Who says that? He hesitated. Everybody, even Cole. He acts like he doesn't care, but he's curious. Heard about that salute back stateside, the Iron Wolf thing. Rhea's eyes hardened. That name stays buried. Mendez lifted his hands. Hey, I'm not the one digging. But just so you know, Cole's not a bad man. He just lost too many people to trust new ones. She looked toward the command hut where Cole's shadow moved against canvas. Trust has to start somewhere. The following week blurred into routine. Patrols, observation posts, reports. Days of sun that burned, nights of sound that carried too far. Rhea adapted faster than anyone expected. She read maps like second nature, spotted movement others missed, spoke less but noticed more. By the third week, even Cole stopped barking orders at her. That's when the incident happened. It was a recon night, 100 hours, Overwatch on Ridge 12. Mendez had drone feed up, flickering thermal signatures moving near the border. 3 figures armed. Cole adjusted his scope. Looks like smugglers, but why cut across this side? It's mined. Rhea studied the pattern of movement. Not smugglers. They're scanning terrain, not avoiding it. Meaning? Scouts, she said quietly, testing our response time. Cole frowned. How do you know? She didn't answer. She just raised her rifle, exhaled, and clicked the safety off. The figures moved closer, too close. Cole called it in. Command, this is Alpha 2, possible hostile recon, request instructions. Static, then Mason's voice. Observe only, do not engage. The figures disappeared behind a ridge. Cole sighed. They'll be ghosts before sunrise. But Rhea kept watching, her finger hovering over the trigger guard. She could feel it, the rhythm, the angle, the speed. It wasn't recon, it was preparation. An hour later, alarms blared across Bravo 9. Mortar rounds whistled through the night. Impact fire chaos. Cole shouted into the comms, "We're under indirect. All units defensive positions." Rhea was already moving. "Get the drone up, find their launch point." Mendez launched it, hands trembling. "North Ridge, heat signature near grid 6-3. Cole barked, "Alpha team on me." Rhea grabbed her rifle, sprinting toward the ridge. The explosions painted the night in fire. When they reached the source, smoke curled from a makeshift pit, spent tubes, fresh tracks. "They were just here," Cole growled. Rhea scanned the slope, eyes narrowing, split left. They fanned out. Then movement. A flash of cloth, a muzzle glint. Rhea fired first, 2 rounds tight grouping. The figure fell. Cole looked over, stunned. "You saw him before I did." She lowered her weapon. I heard his breath. Cole stared for a long moment, not in disbelief this time, but in something closer to awe. By dawn, the attack was over. Damage minimal, no casualties. Mason met them at the perimeter, face grim. "They were probing us, seeing how fast we'd react. You bought us time." Cole gestured toward Rhea. "She spotted their setup before anyone else. Without that, we'd be digging graves." Mason nodded, noted. Rhea saluted. "With respect, sir, they'll come again. That wasn't an attack, that was rehearsal." Mason studied her. "You think they're testing patterns?" "I know they are." Cole added quietly, "She's been right before." Mason exhaled. "Then we'll be ready next time." He started to walk away, then paused. "Corporal, that calm of yours, I've seen it before. You've done this dance before, haven't you?" Rhea's eyes didn't move. "Yes, sir." He nodded once. "Then let's hope you remember all the steps." That night, as the outpost went quiet again, Cole found her outside by the wire. She sat on a crate, cleaning her rifle by lantern light. "You were good out there," he said. She didn't look up. "We all were." He hesitated. "You ever going to tell me who you really are?" She smirked faintly. "Would you believe me if I did?" He thought about it. "Probably not, but I'd listen." She set the rifle down gently. "I was part of something years ago, a team that didn't officially exist. We did things no one was supposed to know about. When it ended, they erased us." He studied her face, saw the weariness that never reached her voice. "And now?" "Now," she said softly, "I'm just trying to be someone new before the past finds me again." He nodded slowly. "Too late for that." She raised an eyebrow. He looked out toward the dark horizon. "Word travels fast. They're already calling you Iron Wolf here too." Her jaw tightened. "Let them call me whatever they need to. I just do the job." Cole smiled faintly. "Yeah, but you do it better than most." She met his gaze. "That's not always a compliment, Sergeant." He chuckled. "Maybe not, but out here we could use a legend or two." When he left, Rhea looked back toward the ridge, where smoke still lingered from the night's fight. The horizon glowed faintly, orange bleeding into gray. Somewhere in that light, she saw the reflection of every battle she'd ever fought, the ones that counted, the ones that didn't. She whispered quietly to no one, "It never ends, it just changes uniforms." Then she stood, shouldered her rifle, and walked into the dawn. Not as the legend they called Iron Wolf, but as the soldier she'd always been. Silent, steady, and still walking. How many times can a person survive the same night? Different country, different uniform, but the same sound of incoming fire, the same smell of cordite and fear. 2 weeks after the first raid, Bravo 9 went quiet. Too quiet. No patrols crossing the border, no drone pings. Just stillness, a predator's kind of silence. Rhea felt it before the sensors did. The calm that always came before the break. At 1845 hours, the horizon burned orange. Lieutenant Mason stood over the map table, hands braced, eyes hollow. Intel says the enemy's regrouped, he said. 3 platoons worth, maybe more. They're coming for the station that caught their scouts. Cole nodded. That'd be us. Mason looked around the tent. If they hit tonight, we're outnumbered 5-1. Air support's 30 minutes away at best. He looked at Rhea. You've been right about them before. What do you see coming? She studied the map. Ridges, dry riverbeds, arcs of likely approach. They'll come from the east, she said softly. Moon at their back. They'll hit the comms tower first, then push through the motor pool. Mason hesitated. You're sure? Because that's what I would do. The tent fell silent. Cole finally said, then we dig in there. Mason nodded once. All right, defensive lines overlapping fields, we hold till air arrives. He looked at Rhea again. If I go down, you take command, understood. She met his eyes. Understood, sir. By 2100 hours, the desert had gone black. The wind died. The air felt thick enough to swallow sound. Rhea moved along the line, checking positions. Sandbags, ammo, med kits. Private Ramos sat behind an M240, hands shaking. You good? She asked. He nodded too fast. First real one, ma'am. Then remember this, she said quietly. Fear's just information, use it. He swallowed hard. Yes, Corporal. She adjusted his sights by an inch. They'll come from that shadow line. Don't chase the noise. Wait for the movement. He nodded again, steadier this time. Cole passed behind her, loading a fresh magazine. He listens to you, he said. He listens because I don't waste words. Cole smirked. Remind me to do the same. At 21:43 hours, the first flare went up, green light splitting the dark. Then came the sound. Mortars. The first one hit the motor pool, fire rising high. Contact east, Cole shouted. Machine guns opened up, tracers stitched the night. Rhea moved low fast, her voice cutting through chaos. Shift fire, left flank, cover the tower. Rounds hammered the sandbags in front of her. She didn't flinch. She moved where the fire was thickest, where panic lived. Cole yelled, comms are hit, Mason's down. She spun. Mason lay near the HQ doorway, blood on his sleeve, radio shattered beside him. For half a second, everything slowed. Then she picked up the radio handset, switched to backup frequency. All units, this is Voss. You fall back, you die, hold the line. Motor pool, lay suppression northeast. Drone team, mark enemy position with IR. No hesitation, no permission asked. She was in command. The battle became sound and dust. Explosions tore through fuel drums. Smoke burned her throat. She moved between positions, shouting over the chaos. Thompson 3-round bursts. Mendez feed the gun. Out of ammo, someone screamed. She grabbed a spare belt, slammed it into the receiver herself. Now you're not. Cole's voice crackled over comms. They're flanking right. I'm on it, she answered. She sprinted through smoke, bullets snapping past. She reached Ramos's nest, just as a shadow rose from the wire. One round, center mass. The shadow fell. Ramos stared wide-eyed. You just... Reload, she said. Minutes blurred into hours. Each second longer than the last. Each breath a choice. By 22:30, half their ammo was gone. Cole crawled up beside her, blood streaking his arm. We can't hold much longer. We don't need to hold long, she said. We just need to make them believe we can. He looked at her. That's not a plan. It's survival. She lifted her rifle, fired again. They'll break before we do. At 23:07 hours, the second wave came, closer, heavier. RPGs arced through the air, slamming into the outer wall. The concussion threw her back. Her ears rang. When sound returned, it came muffled, like through water. She crawled up, blinking dust from her eyes. Cole was shouting something she couldn't hear. She waved him off, signaling flank left. They moved together, two shadows in a burning world. She felt it before she saw it. Movement in the smoke, three silhouettes advancing low. She squeezed. Three flashes. Three bodies down. Cole exhaled. Remind me never to doubt your instincts again. She gave the faintest smile. Noted. At 23:35, Mendez's voice broke through static. Air support ETA 15 minutes. Copy, Rhea said. Hold positions, don't let them breach. But the line was folding. Ramos's gun went silent. Thompson was hit, leg wound, screaming. Rhea dragged him behind cover, pressed gauze into the bleeding. You'll live. He clutched her sleeve. They're coming through. She looked up, he was right. Figures were moving through the breach, 10, maybe more. Cole yelled, we're out of options. Rhea stood, chambered her last mag. Then we make a new one. She tossed her radio to Cole. Call in grid strike on my mark. He blinked. You'll still be inside the kill zone. I know. He grabbed her arm. Rhea. Mark it. She turned and ran into the breach. Inside the smoke, everything was red and noise. Shouts in another language, footsteps, heat. She moved like instinct, controlled, deliberate. One shot step, one shot step. Each trigger pull was a memory of another place, another night she swore she'd never relive. But here she was again. She reached the center of the breach, saw the mortar team setting up. Now, she shouted into the mic. Then she dropped. The ground split open with thunder. Shockwave, dust, silence. When she opened her eyes, the sky was pale gray. Dawn. Everything hurt. Her right arm was numb. Smoke drifted across craters where the enemy line used to be. Voices echoed, distant, distorted. Medic, we've got one here. Hands lifted her. Cole's face appeared, smeared with soot, eyes wet. You're insane. Alive, she whispered. Barely, but yeah. He laughed once, half relief, half grief. Strike hit perfect, you ended it. She tried to sit up, but he pushed her back gently. Stay down, Iron Wolf. The name didn't sting this time. She closed her eyes. Don't call me that. He smiled. Too late, the whole unit saying it now. She let out a slow breath. Figures. By mid-morning, helicopters circled overhead. Air support, medevac. Bravo 9 still stood, charred but alive. 23 Marines wounded, 2 killed. Hundreds of enemies scattered or dead. Mason, arm in a sling, approached her stretcher. You disobeyed a direct order, Corporal. Yes, sir. You also saved everyone here. She said nothing. He knelt beside her. I'll file the report as tactical improvisation. That sound good. She almost smiled. You're generous, sir. Not generous, he said, grateful. He looked toward the horizon. They'll write about this one. You'll get your commendation. She shook her head weakly. No need, the noise fades. He frowned. Then what stays? She opened her eyes. The faces. That night, Bravo 9 buried the fallen. No speeches, no band, just boots in the sand and names read aloud. Cole stood beside her as the flag folded. You could have died out there, he said quietly. Wouldn't be the first time. Still, why go in alone? She stared at the horizon where firelight met night. Because someone had to, and I already knew the way. He nodded slowly. You really are Iron Wolf. She turned to him. No, I'm just someone who learned that silence can be louder than orders. He smiled faintly. Then maybe that's what leadership is. When the others drifted away, she stayed by the fresh mounds. Wind moved across the desert like a sigh. She crouched, resting a hand on one of the helmets placed in the sand. I carried you once, she whispered. Different faces, same fight. Maybe this time I did it right. A tear traced through dust on her cheek. She wiped it away, stood, and looked east, where dawn bled into gold. Back in the command tent, a radio crackled. A new message from command. Alpha Team, commendation in progress. Effective immediately, Corporal Rhea Voss is recommended for field promotion to sergeant for exceptional leadership under fire. Cole looked over at her. You hear that? She shrugged. I don't need rank to lead. He grinned. Maybe not, but you've already got something better. What's that? Belief from the people who matter. Later, when the camp slept, she walked to the perimeter alone. The wire still glowed faintly from the blast heat. Beyond it, nothing but dark. She stood there for a long time, listening to the quiet heartbeat of the desert. Somewhere behind her, a voice murmured from a bunker radio, someone playing a scratched recording of the Marine Corps hymn. The melody was thin, almost ghostly. She smiled. Not for pride. For peace. Because for the first time in years, she wasn't running from the name they'd given her. She was living it. Not as a myth. Not as a ghost. But as proof that courage doesn't need witnesses, only purpose. She whispered into the night. Rest easy, boys, I'll hold the line. And the wind answered like it always did, soft, eternal, carrying her promise into the dark. What happens when the noise stops? When the smoke clears and the world forgets to clap? That's the part no one warns you about. The silence after survival. 6 months later. The war, if anyone was still calling it that, had shifted north. Bravo 9 had been dismantled, its bunkers turned to rubble, its flag packed into storage somewhere no one would visit twice. Rhea Voss, now Sergeant Rhea Voss, sat in a metal chair outside a small coastal outpost, boots unlaced, dog tags resting against her skin like ghosts that refused to leave. The sea stretched out before her, calm, indifferent. A letter rested on her knee. Her commendation for valor. Unread. She traced a finger over her name, then folded it again. The wind tugged at the edge of the page, whispering like something alive. Cole found her there just before sunset. He'd shaved mostly. His left arm was still in a sling, but his grin was intact. Figured I'd find you hiding here, he said. Not hiding, she said, just breathing. He nodded, settling beside her. That's a luxury these days. They sat in silence a while, listening to the tide slap against the pier. Finally, he said, they're nomming a new post up north, Voss Point, for you. She turned her head slowly. They shouldn't. Too late, paperwork's already signed. She stared out at the horizon again. They think nomming something fixes what's broken. Maybe it just reminds us what held. She said nothing. He looked at her profile, calm, unreadable. You ever going back? To what? To command, to training, to being Iron Wolf. She let out a breath that wasn't quite a laugh. I don't think she exists anymore. He frowned. Then who are you now? She thought for a long time. Someone who's learning to sleep without scanning doorways. Later that night, the base mess was half empty. The few who remained from Bravo 9 sat together, quieter than before. Ramos was there, his right hand still bandaged but smiling again. Mendez cracked jokes in between spoonfuls of powdered mashed potatoes. Thompson, limping but alive, lifted his cup, to the ones who didn't make it. They all raised their cups. Then Ramos added softly, and to the one who made sure we did. Eyes turned toward Rhea. She froze, then smiled faintly. Don't toast me, toast what we became out there. Cole grinned. That's what we're doing. She looked at him. No, you're toasting survival. That's not the same as living. The room went quiet. She stood, finished her drink, and set the cup down gently. You all earn the right to rest. Don't waste it. Then she left, her boots echoing against the floor like punctuation marks that didn't need words. Outside, the sky was black velvet. The stars were finally visible, not through night vision, not behind smoke. Real, clean. She walked down toward the docks, stopping where the waves kissed the shore. For a moment, she saw her reflection, the faint shimmer of a soldier who'd seen too much. Then a second reflection appeared beside it, Cole. He handed her something small, a patch faded gray, the head of a wolf stitched in black. "They found this in the debris at Bravo 9, he said. "Figured you want it." She turned it over in her hand, thumb tracing the worn threads. "Funny, I didn't even wear this one." "Maybe it wore you," he said. She looked at him, really looked. "Why do you stay, Cole, after all this?" He shrugged. "Because some people need to keep the light on, in case the lost ones ever find their way back." She nodded slowly. "Then keep it burning, but don't wait for me." He half smiled. "You'll be back." "No," she said softly, "but I'll always hear the call." Weeks passed. Her transfer orders came through, temporary reassignment, stateside rehabilitation and evaluation division, which in the language of bureaucracy meant you did your part. Go be human again. She packed light, just her uniform, her journal, her rifle sling. Before she left, she walked the perimeter one last time. Every turn, every stretch of fence, every echo of her footsteps carried weight. She stopped where the breach had been, where she'd stood in the fire months ago. Now grass was growing through the blackened dirt. She crouched, brushed her fingers over the ground. "You remember, don't you?" she whispered. The earth didn't answer, but somehow she knew it did. Back home, the world was too loud. Traffic screamed voices. No one looked over shoulders. No one spoke in radio codes. And yet, every time she walked past an alley, her mind drew invisible angles, fields of fire, exits, elevation, muscle memory that wouldn't fade. She took up running, long distances, no music, no company, just the sound of her own breath. Sometimes she'd stop and look up at the sky, no flares, no tracers, and still feel like she should duck. Healing, it turned out, wasn't peace. It was just endurance with quieter rules. One afternoon, a letter arrived. From Lieutenant Mason. It was short-typed. "Sergeant Voss. Bravo 9 has been officially commended. Command wants a name for the citation. I told them we already had one. They're calling it the Iron Wolf Defense. For what it's worth, that name's not about you anymore. It's about what you taught us. We hold, we adapt, we endure." A Mason. Rhea read it twice, then folded it neatly and placed it in her pocket. That night she visited a memorial outside the base, rows of stone engraved with names, each one polished smooth by rain and grief. She walked slowly, fingers brushing the carved letters. She stopped at one, SFC Danner, the man she never found. She knelt, whispering, "We held, Sergeant. I hope that counts for something." The wind moved across the stones, whispering back through the trees. She closed her eyes. The sound wasn't war anymore. It was peace pretending to be memory. Days became weeks. She started teaching at the training academy, marksmanship, tactics, discipline. The recruits didn't know who she was, just Instructor Voss. She liked it that way. But sometimes when a new trainee hesitated at the firing line, she'd say softly, "Don't fight the fear, listen to it." And when one would ask, "Ma'am, were you ever in combat?" she'd smile, a small private thing. "Once or twice." No stories, no medals, just lessons. Because sometimes, the loudest truth is the one you don't need to prove. One morning, the base commander called her in. "Got a visitor asking for you," he said. She frowned. "Who?" He gestured toward the hall. Cole stood there holding a folder, older, calmer, still carrying the desert in his eyes. "New orders," he said. "There's an operation forming, humanitarian escort, no combat expected. Thought you might want in." She looked at the file, then at him. "No combat expected," she repeated. He grinned. "When has that ever been true?" She hesitated. "I said I was done." "You did," he said, "but the world doesn't always listen." That night, she sat in her quarters staring at the sea again. The patch lay on the table beside her, the wolf, worn and frayed. She thought of Bridgeport, of Bravo 9, of the salute that started it all. Iron Wolf salute. It wasn't a call to glory. It was a call to remember. Not the myth, the meaning. At dawn, she packed her bag again. Light, silent, efficient. As she stepped out, the morning air carried salt and promise. Cole waited by the jeep, so. She tossed her duffel in the back. "I'll ride along, just until it gets loud again." He smiled. "Wouldn't be the same without you." She put on her cap, pulled the brim low. "Let's hope it's quieter this time." He started the engine. "With you around, doubt it." They drove off as the sun climbed, light pouring over the road, washing the shadows away. The camera would fade here if this were film. The music would be slow, soft. But her story wouldn't end. It would just keep walking, one quiet footstep after another, through every soldier who ever learned that respect isn't given. It's earned in the silence between orders. And maybe, somewhere out there, another Marine would whisper her name like a code word. Not because she was a legend, but because she reminded them what dignity looks like when no one's watching. Sometimes courage shouts. Sometimes it bleeds. But the rare kind, the real kind, doesn't need to be seen at all. It just holds the line. It just breathes. It just is. And when it moves, even the wind listens. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.